The Vatican has an official exorcist, not in the medieval sense, not historically, right now, today. The Catholic Church has a trained ordained priest whose specific job is to perform exorcisms on people the Church believes are genuinely possessed by demonic forces. His name is Father Gabriele Amorth, and before he died in 2016, he claimed to have performed over 70,000 exorcisms. 70,000. And the Vatican knew about every single one. Here is what they did not want you to know about what he found. Before we go into the cases, let's establish something important. This is not a video about whether you believe in demonic possession. This is a video about what actually happened to real people. Documented cases, medical records, witness testimonies, court documents, police reports. Whatever you believe is causing what you are about to hear, the events themselves are real. The suffering was real. The people were real. And in several of these cases, what the witnesses described has never been adequately explained by medicine, psychology, or science. That is not an invitation to believe in the supernatural. It is an acknowledgement that something happened, and nobody fully understands what. Let's start with the case the Vatican spent decades trying to control the narrative around. Anneliese Michel, Bavaria, Germany, 1976. Anneliese was 21 years old, a devout Catholic, a university student, by all accounts a deeply religious, thoughtful, serious young woman. She had a history of epilepsy, diagnosed at 16. She had experienced what doctors described as psychotic episodes. She was on medication, and then something changed. She began refusing food, not dieting, refusing food entirely. For months, she began hearing voices, not the vague discomfort of anxiety, specific voices, telling her she was damned, that she would rot in hell, that there was no hope for her. She began harming herself, banging her head against walls, tearing at her own skin, eating insects, eating coal, drinking her own urine. She began speaking in voices that were not her own, multiple distinct voices, some of which identified themselves by name: Lucifer, Judas, Nero, Hitler, Cain. Her parents, devout Catholics who watched their daughter deteriorating, contacted the church. 2 Catholic priests, Father Arnold Renz and Pastor Ernst Alt, were eventually granted permission by the local bishop to perform an exorcism. Not immediately. The church required medical evaluation first. Doctors examined Anneliese and found no neurological explanation for what was happening. The exorcism sessions began in 1975. They continued for almost a year. 67 sessions were recorded on audio tape. Those recordings still exist. Listeners who have heard them describe sounds that do not sound like a 21-year-old German woman. The voices are described as guttural, layered, inhuman. In several recordings, multiple voices appear to speak simultaneously from one person. The priests documented what they witnessed. Anneliese displaying physical strength far beyond what her condition should have allowed. Anneliese speaking languages she had never studied. Anneliese describing events happening in other locations that were later verified. Anneliese Michel died on July 1, 1976. She weighed 68 pounds. The official cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration. The 2 priests and her parents were convicted of negligent homicide. They received suspended sentences. The Catholic Church beatified a woman Anneliese had reportedly spoken of during the exorcisms, Therese Neumann, suggesting an indirect acknowledgement that something beyond ordinary illness had been occurring. The case file was sealed. The recordings were not released by the Vatican. They were leaked. The Vatican's response to Anneliese Michel was to go quiet. For decades, the official position of the Catholic Church on exorcism was vague, almost embarrassed. Modern, progressive, possession was a metaphor. Exorcism was a historical practice. The Church had moved on. And then in '99, something remarkable happened. The Vatican quietly updated its official exorcism rite for the first time since 1614. Let that land. 1614. The Church had not updated its official guidelines for dealing with demonic possession in nearly 400 years. The new rite, called the exorcisms et supplicationibus quibusdam, reaffirmed that demonic possession was real, that exorcism was a valid and necessary practice, and that priests should be properly trained to perform it. This was not a medieval document. This was '99, 2 years before the September 11th attacks, the year the Matrix came out. The Catholic Church was telling its priests that demons were real, and here is the updated manual for removing them. Why the update? Why 1999? Father Amorth, who had been performing exorcisms since the 1980s and was the Vatican's most prominent exorcist, said publicly that demand had exploded, that the number of cases being referred to him was growing every year, that the Church was struggling to keep up. He gave interviews, he wrote books, he said things that the Vatican would very much have preferred he kept quiet. He said he had personally witnessed levitation during exorcisms. He said he had witnessed people speaking in languages they had never learned. He said he had witnessed objects moving without physical cause. He said that in his experience, genuine possession was rare, that the majority of cases referred to him had psychological or medical explanations, but that a small percentage did not, and that those cases were unlike anything medicine could account for. The Vatican did not officially endorse his more dramatic claims. They also never publicly contradicted him. The case of Clara Germana Cele, South Africa, 1906. Clara was a 16-year-old student at a Catholic mission school in Natal. She had reportedly made a pact in her own words with the devil. Whether this was literal or metaphorical or something else entirely is part of what makes this case so difficult to categorize. What happened next is documented by 2 Catholic nuns, a priest, and over 12 witnesses. Clara began levitating, not floating gently, rising off the ground and remaining suspended. Multiple witnesses, multiple occasions. The nuns documented instances where Clara rose over a meter off the ground, lying horizontal in the air for extended periods. She reportedly reacted violently to holy water, while showing no reaction to ordinary water in unmarked containers. The containers were switched without her knowledge. She consistently reacted only to the blessed water. She reportedly spoke in languages she had never been taught, including languages the witnesses themselves did not recognize. She reportedly revealed detailed personal information about people she had never met. An exorcism was performed over 2 days. The documentation states that during the process, Clara was physically restrained by multiple people and displayed strength entirely inconsistent with her size and physical condition. The case was reported to the Vatican. The Vatican acknowledged it, filed it, and said very little about it publicly for decades. The Earling Possession, Iowa, United States, 1928. A woman identified in church documents only as Emma Schmidt began exhibiting what her family and local priests described as possession. She had reportedly not eaten in weeks while remaining physically active. She reportedly vomited materials that could not be explained by her diet. She reportedly spoke in multiple voices, identifying themselves as demonic entities, including specifically the spirit of her deceased father, who claimed to have placed a curse on her. Father Theophilus Riesinger, a Capuchin priest with experience performing exorcisms, was brought in. The exorcism took place in the convent at Earling, Iowa. It lasted on and off for 23 days. The nuns who housed the process documented what they witnessed. Emma reportedly levitated. She reportedly clung to walls and ceilings in ways that witnesses said were physically impossible. Her body reportedly contorted in ways that caused observers to leave the room. At one point, witnesses reported that Emma's abdomen swelled dramatically and then rapidly deflated, followed by her reportedly vomiting a large volume of material the witnesses could not identify. Father Riesinger documented the entire process. His account was published in 1935. The Vatican had access to his report. They did not dispute it. They also did not publicize it. Now here is the part that the Church has been most reluctant to discuss openly: the pattern. Because when you look across documented exorcism cases spanning different countries, different centuries, different cultures, different languages, cases where the witnesses had no contact with each other, no access to each other's accounts, no reason to coordinate their stories, certain details repeat. The same details, over and over. Levitation, reported across cases in Germany, South Africa, America, Italy, India, and Brazil. Witnesses who had never read each other's accounts describing the same thing. Reaction to sacred objects while showing no reaction to identical unmarked objects. Documented in case after case, in blind tests, in situations where the person could not have known which object was which. Voices, multiple, simultaneous, distinctly different voices emerging from a single person, described identically by witnesses across centuries. Knowledge of hidden or distant events. People describing things happening in other rooms, other cities, other countries, that were later verified. Superhuman physical strength. People of small stature and compromised physical condition displaying strength that multiple adults could not contain. The Church's own internal documentation, portions of which have been released or leaked over the decades, acknowledges these patterns. What they have not done is explain them. Father Amorth, in the years before his death, became increasingly frustrated with what he saw as the Church's reluctance to take possession seriously. He said publicly that the Vatican had been infiltrated, that evil operated not just in individuals but in institutions. He made statements about specific individuals in positions of power within the Church that caused significant discomfort. He was not silenced. He was not disciplined. He was, in the assessment of people who knew him, considered too prominent and too credible to dismiss. He died in September 2016 at the age of 91, active until nearly the end, still performing exorcisms in his final years. After his death, the Vatican released a statement praising his service and dedication. They did not address his claims about infiltration. They did not address the cases he had documented. They did not release his files. Here is what we actually know. The Catholic Church believes demonic possession is real. This is not a historical position. This is current, active, official doctrine. The Church trains exorcists. There is a course at the Pontifical University of Regina Apostolorum in Rome that teaches priests how to identify and respond to possession. It has been running since 2005. The Church receives thousands of requests for exorcism every year. Father Amorth said the number was rising. His successors have said the same. The Church maintains files on possession cases going back centuries. The Vatican's secret archives, now officially renamed the Vatican Apostolic Archive, contains documents that have not been made publicly available. We do not know what is in them. What we know is what has leaked, what has been documented by witnesses. what has been recorded on tape and heard by people who had no prior belief in possession and came away unable to explain what they heard. The Vatican has had 2,000 years to develop an answer to the question of what demonic possession actually is. They have not shared it. I want to leave you with one final detail from the Anneliese Michel case. In one of the leaked audio recordings from her exorcism sessions, one of the voices speaking through her makes a statement that the priests documented carefully. It says in German that it does not want to leave, that it has been there a long time, that it belongs there. Anneliese, the real Anneliese, is recorded in the same sessions asking the priest to continue, telling them she wants it to end, asking them not to stop. She was 21 years old. She weighed 68 pounds, and she died asking for help that came too late. Whatever you believe about what was happening to her, that detail is not a theological question, it is a human one, and it has never stopped being haunting. If this one unsettled you in a way you were not expecting, good. That means you were paying attention. The Anneliese Michel case. The Vatican's 1999 exorcism update. Father Amorth 70,000 cases. The pattern across documented cases that the Church acknowledges and does not explain. These are not ghost stories. These are documented events. Real people, real institutions, real records that someone decided should not be public. That is exactly the kind of history this channel exists to uncover. Next week, we go inside the Jonestown massacre. 900 Americans followed a preacher into the jungle and never came home. The audio recordings from the final night have been declassified. They are the most disturbing thing I have ever heard. And I will play you the parts they never put on the news. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Drop a comment telling me which case in this video disturbed you most. I read every single one. I'll see you in the dark.